Welcome all. Being that it's Wednesday, October 14th at 7 o'clock, I'd like to call the Lakeville Project Review Committee for the 43D to order. This is a remote meeting. And the first item I'd like to read into the record is in accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law 30A, section 20 related to the 2020 novel coronavirus outbreak emergency. The October 14th, 2020 public meeting of the Project Review Committee for 43D shall be physically closed to the public to avoid group congregation. However, to view this meeting in progress, please go to facebook.com/LakeCAM. You do not need a Facebook account to view the meeting. This meeting will be recorded and available to be viewed at a later date at www.lakecam.tv/. First up, I'm just going to go through a little roll call of attendance for the record for board members. And first in gallery view, I see Chief Perkins. Just give us a little wave. He's present. See Chris Spratt, Vice Chair, present. Rich LaCamera.
Present.
Chief O'Brien, present. Bob Bouchard.
Present.
And Nathan Darling.
I'm here.
And Liz Nash. And John Oliveri. So those are all the board members present, or the committee members present, sorry. And could everybody from Rhino Capital, I see Tyler Murphy and Brittany Gesner. Is there anyone else specifically from Rhino? I see VHB Engineering. And
yeah, hi Mark. This is Tyler Murphy. It's just myself representing Rhino Capital.
Okay.
But VHB represents part of our team as well as Attorney Mather.
All right.
And we have 4 representatives from VHB on the call today.
I see Dan Megan,
Matt Keeley and Sarah French.
very good. Did I miss anybody? We have Scott Turner from Environmental Partners, who's doing peer review work for the town. And Attorney Mather is representing as well. So at this time, the next item on the agenda is the 43D pre-application meeting with Rhino Capital regarding the Lakeville Hospital property development. So at this time, I'd like to turn the floor over to Tyler.
Hi, everyone. Brittany, do you mind if we just pull that up, the schedule that we had sent and the earning matrix?
Yep, sharing now, starting with the matrix for the filing materials.
Okay. There we go. Okay. So we've had some preliminary conversations with various members of the town, and what we had come up with is this matrix that you see before you, which is what we believe needs to be submitted in order to achieve 3 different permits that we're seeking. That permit schedule is the small box you see on the right, where it says Planning Board Special Permit, Conservation Commission, NOI, Board of Health, Septic Plan Approval. These are the local approvals that we are seeking, and in order to achieve them, we believe that we need to submit the following. We've broken it up a little bit between the various groups, Concom, Board of Health, etc. And some of these things were filled in from, we've obviously had preliminary hearings, many discussions, our own experience is really the way that we came up with this, what we believe to be a comprehensive list. With that introduction, would we like to go through this item by item, or what do we feel the best way is to do this?
Why don't you just give a brief rundown by section for now, and then if anybody has any comment.
Okay. So first, submission requirements. existing conditions plan, site plan, septic plan, landscape plan. What we're trying to achieve here, all this sort of is summarized by what I call a site plan. And the site plan is, of course, the main item of focus here. And that site plan will be broken up into various parts. So when we show the building within the land, we are going to have a photometrics plan which shows how light is distributed on the site. Our landscape plan will include, of course, literal architectural style drawings from a plan view, as well as renderings that will show the view from Main Street, which I understand is important, and a couple other views with the building in the background. We've displayed some of those to date. Those were mainly conceptual. These will be more representative of what's actually planning and being proposed to be built. Septic plans is somewhat self-explanatory. We can get in further to that. That plan's been finalized, so we can talk about the location if needed. Site plan, of course, is going to show grading and other important items. Existing conditions plan, what's on site. Stormwater management report is going to be very detailed, but the main means of handling stormwater is via various detention ponds on site, which will be shown in detail. Our traffic study, as well as our NOI to the Conservation Commission. So scrolling down into the Lakeville Conservation Commission, this is more getting into what we've seen between reviewing the 43D package, as well as the Conservation Commission's requirements of how we believe these need to be submitted. And Brittany, going down to septic. So for the septic, we've done our soil testing and have located this. Then keep going down. And this is getting in more into the exact details of what is going to be shown on the site plan. You'll see a couple notes here for traffic, and we'll also be including a detailed noise study. But in short, I would classify all this, unless we want to get into every single item here, as what would be expected or typical of a traditional, well-detailed, permit-ready or permit set of site plans. If we can go down there to additional submissions, Brittany. Yeah, and these are the additional submissions. So we have been requested for various reasons to show some architectural elevations, which we will have views of all four sides of the building, as well as a roof plan, which will show where we're planning on locating rooftop equipment. This particular building does not actually have a lot of rooftop equipment. The vast majority of the square footage is heat only, which reduces the rooftop equipment quite a bit, but we will show that. As I had mentioned, the noise study, and Nate and I had looked over the rules regarding the earth removal permit. Aside from the landfill, which is its own sort of category, we're not planning on removing any earth from the site. We're doing our best to balance it. We've gotten very, very close. So there's no mass export of material from the site. Again, excluding the landfill and buildings themselves. I'll stop there. Again, happy to get into any level of detail that's asked, but I think what our goal here is to do is to sort of understand if we're missing anything, or if this feels in line with what the various groups are looking for.
So I'm going to say at a glance, I mean, it looks complete. However, we've only had it for a day and I haven't had a chance to kind of cross-reference it against the rules and regs. And I guess I'd like to open the floor to comment for any other board members that would like to speak to the completeness of this list. So I can't see everybody in gallery view because of the screen share, but does anybody on the committee have any comments regarding this submission?
Yeah, I do, Mark. It's a simple one too. It'd just be, the other thing that's probably kind of missing from that is just notification of all abutters. And if there's any variance requests, there's going to be other stuff that will be a little bit more detailed, letters and stuff like that that would go along with some of these submittals. It's pretty basic stuff, but it's not on there.
So we have included noticing abutters for the Conservation Commission. A lot of times we find that when we go in front of the planning board, the town handles the noticing of the abutters. Is that something that the town will handle for the planning board filing, or is that something that you want us to handle?
Well, I would speak more to like being the Board of Health representative. Like,
Yep.
I don't know exactly what you guys are gonna have for the septic, but if it came to variances, there may be some triggers there depending on the variances you've asked for. It's just
Okay.
a preliminary
Dan,
thing. More than
Dan,
anything.
do we anticipate any variances on the septic design? Or do we not know that yet? It's okay if we don't know that yet.
As far as the Conservation Commission, we require that the applicant do the notification.
Yeah, we're planning to do it for the Conservation Commission. We'll have the green cards for
Okay.
the hearing.
Yeah, and as far as the planning board, we did recently discuss this. I'm not sure if it actually passed in a vote, but we were gonna pass this along to the applicant. So if you guys don't mind, we would like you to submit the mailings as well for abutters.
Okay. All right, got it. Make note of that.
I'm very new at this, so I'm not even, it's Liz Nash from the Open Space Committee. When I went back to our committee to talk to them about all of this, and they read that Rhino was actually paying attention to like and talking about native species as part of the plantings on the property, they were pretty excited. And so I didn't know if perhaps in this landscape plans, there could be a list of the plants that are planned.
There will be a schedule. Yep, there'll be a schedule of proposed plants.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Yep.
And that's a good point, just on a larger topic from the standpoint of, sort of defining what do we mean when we say landscape plan, right? Are you going to include things like schedules? And so, just from our perspective, using that as just a specific example, when we say site plan or landscape plan, all these plans will be professionally done and have every reasonable detail that one could expect. So they're going to be taken all the way down the line. So the landscape plan will be very, very detailed specifically, but so will all the other plans that we're noting here.
Very good. Does anyone else have any comment?
Babu Shad, Lakeville Conservation. You did a good job in listing all the required submittals. One thing that you may use as a substitute, we have 7 copies of the original plans. If you want to substitute that with digital copies to save paper, that's fine with us.
Okay, that's an interesting point to bring up. It would be good to hear from you guys how many printed copies you want of everything, or if you just want one printed copy and everything mostly digital. I know that many towns and cities are moving away even from what their requirements are just due to COVID.
Exactly, that's what we're doing. And if you want, down the road, I can give you a more definitive plan as to how many actual copies we would need, so
Okay.
that we don't have to overdo it.
That would be great. And I'd be very interested to hear from the other boards as well, what their preference is for electronic versus hard copies.
Yeah, as far as the planning board, I think initially we'll accept electronic copies. And I may feel out the board and see if we need a couple of hard paper copies, but I won't make you print all. It would be, I guess, 5 or 6 copies, but one for each member and then the clerk to have one on file.
Okay.
But I picture this being as thick or not thicker than a phone book, so.
Yeah, so it may be
Conversation.
best to just start electronic, and then if anyone has a request for anything hard copy, we can get it printed and mailed over to them within days.
Yeah, or maybe out of the gate, we could say maybe one hard copy for each office out of maybe the conservation, the planning board, and the Board of Health. Just so we have one in the office for reference for each.
Okay. And that's okay with the Board of Health as well? If we go that route, we'll plan just electronic and we'll send one printed copy to each of your boards.
I think initially,
Okay.
my other board members may want copies, and we may need something for the file too.
Okay.
I'll discuss that in our next meeting too. But yeah, one initially is good.
Okay, great. And like I said, if that changes, we can get them printed, pretty quickly and mailed right over to wherever it needs to go. But nothing worse than printing way too many that nobody wants.
All right, does anyone else have any comment on this submittal?
So Mark, this is Scott Turner with Environmental Partners.
Go ahead, Scott.
A couple of things. We had a call on Friday morning to talk about the submittal. There were two things that I just wanted to bring up. One is, and this is at the pleasure of, the town representatives. We discussed, any kind of fiscal information such as tax revenue that'll be coming in. That might be something that would be helpful, that may be helpful to the planning board. And then another item, which, well, to back up, and I guess that might be something that you might want to consider. And then the second thing is they will be filing an expanded ENF with the MEPA office, which is not technically part of this filing, but the town will receive a copy of. So I would think it'd have a lot of duplicate information to these documents. But just be aware, and I believe their schedule to file that is shortly after their schedule to file these documents.
Correct. And just to elaborate on that, the MEPA filing, we're looking to file in middle of November, and that's a public filing. Anybody who requests a copy, one will automatically be submitted to the town, but anyone else from the public who requests a copy, we have to provide a copy of that electronically or hard copy as well.
I'm sorry, it's Liz Nash from the Open Space. Can you folks, what's an ENF with MEBA?
Sure thing. You want to take that, Scott, or you want me to?
Feel free.
Okay. MEPA is the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, I believe.
Protection Act.
Protection Act. Thank you. And it is a review process at the state level. It's not a permit, but it's a review process that's required for certain projects that exceed both a specified threshold and require a related state permit. So with this project, we do require a Mass DOT access permit because Main Street is a state highway, and we exceed a development threshold, which for this project is the creation of more than 10 acres of impervious area. So both that exceedance of a threshold and the requirement of that state permit require us to go through MEPA review at an EIR level. That's called an environmental impact report. So we need to file an environmental impact report with MEPA before Mass DOT will issue the access permit for this project.
Thank you.
It's about a 4 to 6 month long process. It's very detailed. And as Scott mentioned, it has a lot of duplicative information, which we'll be submitting to you already. And what we'll be filing in November will be the first step of that process. It's typically a 3-step process, but we are requesting a 2-step process for this project because this is a Chapter 43D priority development site with prioritizing expedited permitting for it.
Okay, very good. Anybody else?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I can make a recommendation to kind of go through these and make sure we get committee members' input. I see a few more permits or approvals that are going to be needed. For instance, the water allocation through the Board of Selectmen. I think that, Tyler's absolutely right in saying an earth removal permit won't be necessary. But I do think that a memo or request to the Board of Selectmen, making sure that they vote that to be the case, explaining that the materials taken off-site will be the hazardous waste or environmental impacted materials. Let the Board of Selectmen actually make a vote that they won't be requiring an earth removal permit. We just want to kind of cross everything off the list as we go through this. kind of looking on my list, I see the local approvals requested the special permit. I think we should make sure that it's clear it's a special permit under the Development Opportunities District, along with or in conjunction with site plan review, two clearly separate processes that can be run together. I think the Conservation Commission, and I'd like to make sure that Bob also weighs in on this. The notice of intent, I think, is probably the only thing that's going to be required from them for, permits and approvals. Board of Health, Chris, if you could elaborate on, there'll be a septic approval, but Board of Health will also be questioning the water connection, make sure they have adequate flows and potability testing on that. And then the Historic Commission will be approving the demolition of the building.
Nate, thank you. We will make sure that we add those items and do pick up the water allocation permit as well. So we'll make those adjustments on our end.
Thank you, Tyler. I think everybody's had a chance to comment. If nobody else has anything else, I'd like you to move on, Tyler.
Okay, Brittany will go down to the schedule here. So what VHB and Rhino have done here is what we're displaying is our best attempt at how we believe this should be broken down into sort of manageable chunks of information. Some of our conversations have been about how do we make these hearings meaningful and be able to convey the right amount of information in the right amount of time. If we just start to try to go through, for example, the entire list that we just showed, the hearings are going to run on for hours and hours and hours, and we're probably going to honestly miss things. So what we've tried to do here is come up with what we believe to be a realistic schedule with incremental spacing, being mindful of the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas, New Year's, of how we're trying to break down information into more manageable items that we all felt were additionally related because the plans are sort of similar. Just using an example, public hearing number 3, architect, landscape, lighting, and noise, all these things are sort of intertwined into one another because they all relate to the site design. Lighting is part of the site design, whether it's functional or not. So we tried to group these items of what you saw above, again, into similar, manageable hearings, the best that we could. So we have the start of this. Wednesday, October 28th is the date that we have been targeting internally and discussing with the town for quite some time, that we are trying to get all of our different consultant groups together and have our first package together of all the information you just saw above. This will allow us to get this over to peer reviewer and hopefully have some initial comments, questions, and allow a little bit of changes or things, additions or deletions on our end prior to our first public hearing, which we're projecting to be November 18th. So we'll have some introduction, project overview, wetland delineation. And then you can see after every single item, we have this line where it says comments to from peer reviewers. So as the peer reviewer sees things or we get different comments from the hearing, it allows us a chance to all review and discuss and make changes that will be presented at the next hearing. Public hearing number 2, zoning, use, site layout, parking, access, and circulation. Which again, trying to keep those things all together. Number 3, architectural, landscape, lighting, and noise. So really looking at what's on the site, what does it look like, how does it feel, how does it sound. Number 4, traffic. 5, wetlands, grading, stormwater management, and erosion control. And lastly, septic and utilities. Public hearing number 7 we have on March 3rd, which we hope to be sort of a catch-all where we're presenting what we hope to be the final complete package that encompasses all the changes previously had or requested, discussed, and of course, we can continue to have hearings past this. So it's not like March 3rd comes and we're saying, well, that's it. This is again, just our best effort that we're trying to put forth and how we believe it could go, understanding that it may need to run longer. But we feel that we can achieve and review all this information and make edits, changes in this amount of time.
All right, so the first thing that came to mind when I looked at that was, yeah, tonight, Wednesday, October 14th, we're doing the pre-filing hearing as the committee for the 43D. But after November 11th, when we kick off with the peer review and you've submitted your plans, if everything's been deemed complete in your application, when we meet on Wednesday, November 18th, it's really not any longer 43D. That's going to be Conservation Commission and maybe some members from some other boards. We need to make sure that there aren't conflicts with those boards. I do agree that Wednesday's probably a good night, but we kind of want to board to board, make sure that when planning board things come up or we need joint meetings, that that's going to work. Just probably Board of Health and Planning Board will have some joint meetings at these because, and my point is, after or on the November 18th meeting on, my understanding after talking with Nate, the building commissioner today, that that's really going to become the public hearings for the respective boards, not the 43D committee. So we kind of need to make sure that's going to work. You want to go ahead, Tyler?
Yeah, Mark, that's all. That's very good. That's all very good points. So two things. One is that we don't necessarily need it to be Wednesday. We're absolutely happy to conform to whatever is best for the respective boards. Brittany just tried to review all the schedules and found that Wednesday sort of seemed like the day that boards or the boards that we need to meet with weren't meeting, but certainly happy to adjust it for whatever the town feels is best. And then I think we should talk about the second point about meeting with the individual boards versus meeting with them all via the 43D committee and kind of how that's going to work, or how does that work?
I wonder if, because a topic that came up on our meeting Friday was it likely makes sense for us to have special hearings for this project and not present this project as part of your regularly scheduled hearings. That way, other applicants aren't sitting through this project for an hour or however long we go through this. And so I wonder if, we want to figure out which representatives need to be at each meeting. And as you can see, I just proposed something. I'm not saying folks can't be there. It's just, a starting point if we want to figure out who feels like they may need to be at certain meetings and who doesn't.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with the Wednesday thing, or at least a different night. It doesn't make sense to try and have any one of these 7 public hearings when we have a lot of other stuff on a board's agenda in the same night. It would be just way too much.
Mark, we're not talking about the entire board being present, just a representative.
But no, after the November 18th meeting, that's going to be the conservation hearing. And on what looks like the February 3rd, conservation is going to be involved in that, wetlands grading, stormwater management.
I would recommend that we do as much as possible up front because of the weather can, as you know, can affect our work. So
yes. So that's why you may notice what we're proposing is at the very first thing that we cover is delineation. And hopefully if you guys want to get out to the site and review the delineation, hopefully we can get that done in the next 4 to 6 weeks before we have to deal with snow. That's being optimistic now in the middle of October, but
that would be ideal.
that would definitely be our goal, is to, and I believe you've been talking to Sarah quite a bit, but if we could coordinate anything as quickly as possible with you and or the peer reviewer to get you guys out on site and review the delineation before weather stops being our friend.
Good idea.
Yeah, Bob, if you want to reach out to me, I'd be happy to set something up in the next couple of weeks for you guys to review the line.
Yeah, and I wonder if Scott, I don't know if you guys have your environmental scientist on board for the peer review yet or not. Or if that'll be you guys, I assume, or if you're subbing that.
We're going to sub it. I need to get somebody under contract, and I have a couple of ideas, just have not gone through the exercise of contracting that. I don't see it being a problem, that date. But we can go ahead and get moving on it.
Yeah, that would definitely be one of the key priorities where time is of the essence.
Right.
But just to build off of that, Bob, we are not filing an ANRAD. So the goal is to at least just have you and your commission and your representatives take a look at the delineation and feel comfortable with that as part of the NOI.
Yeah, you can build on a lot of the existing documentation. There's been a lot of work that's been done. The commission is very familiar with it, so that should streamline it a little bit.
Absolutely. And I think our delineation, the wetlands were just redelineated this past spring, and they followed almost identically to what was filed in 2007, with the exception of one area which grew a little bit.
All right, good.
So back to my point though, and to your point, Bob, at some point boards are going to need to take a vote on this. It will be a conservation hearing. It won't be a 43D hearing.
Gotcha.
So to Tyler and Brittany, would you guys be amenable if, for example, Bob, could you clear conservation's schedule for one of these public hearings and have it on a Tuesday where we don't put anything else on a conservation hearing, so that the board meets on the regular night and we shift it for that week to be the conservation night, but you have to be able to not have anything else on the agenda?
Well, and I think the hope with this, because there are some topics that cross the lines between boards and commissions, for example, stormwater management, both the planning board and the conservation commission will want to review that and have a say in it. So our goal was to, I think one of the things we discussed Friday was if we outline these hearings by topic and then identify which boards need to be present for those topics. That way we can have one discussion about stormwater management, but both the planning board and the conservation commission are hearing the same thing.
Yeah, and again, I agree with the Wednesdays. I'm fine with it. I guess I don't want to speak for every board and every member that's not present on this committee. I guess I'd like to leave here tonight at our next meetings for all of the respective members here, go back to their boards and just make sure that the Wednesday schedule is going to work, so we can come back and say, hey, it's a go. We'll make it work.
Yeah, and to be clear, we just picked Wednesday just for simplicity. Please, if you guys want it to all be Tuesdays, or if we want to change January 20th week to be a Tuesday, I mean, that's all up for discussion. Whatever works for you guys works for us.
Okay. Well,
This is just a starting point.
Yeah, I think that the Wednesday thing is a good thing, because if we are trying to get multiple boards in one room, so to speak, there wouldn't be a scheduling conflict on a Wednesday, because most boards don't meet on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think maybe just the Board of Health. We'll just need to. I did not back check. I think whichever
We meet the
Wednesdays you
first
guys
and third
meet.
Wednesdays.
Okay, so I think that does conflict with these first. So we'll
we
need
are
to
at
sort
6.
that out.
We are at 6 o'clock where these have been 7.
Oh, perfect.
If we could maybe finagle something where we have a smaller meeting beforehand, or but I think every other, the second and fourth Tuesdays I think are open too. I think looking at the regular schedule, because that's when we've met either the second and fourth. This committee has met either the second and fourth Tuesday, or the second and fourth Wednesday and the first and third Tuesdays, I think, is when we've been meeting, because those have been open to no other groups. I think there could be some smaller groups that don't involve, but
Okay.
the calendar gets busy.
So again, I think to reiterate, I think every board member here tonight needs to go back to their respective boards and just make sure that, and forward this document to your clerk within your board so that all the members can review it. And if we find a conflict, and just try to get something that does work. If we have to amend a couple of dates, we will. But I do think that having basically a clear night from most meetings that all other, boards can conduct their business on the other nights and meet on an agreed night is a wise thing.
Yeah. Does this outline that I've kind of marked up here, does this feel like the right board representation for each of these meetings? Have I erroneously left someone out or added someone onto something you're not interested in?
Yeah, Board of Health should be on the noise, the architectural one, because of the noise.
Okay.
And I think open space would want to be on that one as well for the landscaping.
That'd be great.
Okay, because if you guys would like, I can modify this outline to identify which boards we're anticipating to have attendance before you forward along. That way it's clear as you're discussing with your representative boards,
I think
which ones you're expecting them to attend.
Maybe where it's just the overview, the first meeting, you might want to include open space there as well.
Yep.
Thank you.
But no, it looks good. And I like you kind of bulleting out in the red to show the
Maybe at the
priority.
end too.
You should
Glad you're here, open space. Not trying to leave you out.
maybe put Board of Health instead of noise.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Oh, sorry, guys. I'm not a night person. Again, I typed it wrong.
Sorry, we're talking noise. Hear one thing, type one thing.
So this is Tyler, just a question. I think this has gone back and forth a couple times. What I'm hearing, and I just want to clarify, is that as Brittany's writing planning, conservation, etc., that is under we're going to proceed that means meeting with the entire planning board, not for lack of a better term, a 43D committee planning board or a representative. This is the whole planning board, whole conservation, etc.
That would be my thoughts based on this conversation. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
We're actually working on it. I don't know if it'll be resolved tonight, but we're working on appointing a new permits coordinator that would probably be wise for once we nail down that position. If Brittany's your point of contact, would put her in contact with the new person to do the permits coordinating to assemble the board members into those meetings.
Okay.
All right. So do you have anything else on that, Tyler, or can I go on and just request comment from any other members here?
No, that was it. Just the last question would be, given the situation with COVID, is the anticipation that these will be via Zoom or in person?
Rich, do you want to speak to that? You're muted.
Right now, I think we have to plan on Zoom meetings. Except, maybe the site plan review for the planning board, but we'll have to decide that, at a later date. So the coordination, like Mark says, with the project coordinator, determining, who can attend this meeting, public and so forth and so on, is going to have to be coordinated to see, who wants access, to this meeting, as well. As you know, in the Zoom meetings, we have a comment section, but in certain situations, we may have to allow, like abutters, as an example, to attend the meeting, on Zoom directly. So I think all of that, has to be worked out. We got a little time to do that, but the problem that we have is that, like the police station where we had the in-person meeting, we can only put 14 people in there because of COVID-19. And the other problem that we've had is that we had a combination of a hybrid meeting for that, in-person and hybrid. And we had a lot of audio and video problems, with the connections that still have not been worked out. And I know that LakeCAM is working on that. So it depends upon the situation. I can't give you a direct answer right now.
And
No,
just
that
to
was very helpful.
clarify,
Thank you.
you mentioned the meetings pertaining to site plan review may need to be in person because of the commentary. Our intent with this outline is that all of the public hearings associated with all of the submissions are part of this schedule. So site plan review, special permit, NOI, so that there wouldn't be, one specific hearing that's focused just on site plan review.
No, I understand that, Brittany.
Okay.
Like I said, looking at the schedule, we have to figure it out. I mean, I mean,
Rich, with the library could hold more people too.
not as many as you think. Because I forget what it was, Nate. I don't know if you remember what it was off the top of your head, but it wasn't more. So the problem that you have is if you open it up as a public meeting and then people come and you can't accommodate them, you got to turn them away, then you have to cancel the meeting or reschedule it. So that's where the problem comes in. So, you can't deny people if you are doing an in-person meeting. Whereas if you do, you can do an in-person meeting and restrict some people to attend the meeting. They could sign up ahead of time, but we have to work out the logistics of this problem.
And we may have some capacity issues with Zoom too, I believe, right? There's only so many.
I don't think so.
I mean, if there's like 3 boards, all the representatives of the developer, and then say 50 of butters, are they all going to be looking into the same Zoom meeting?
I think so. Okay. I think it's unlimited, but we'll double check that because we have a master license, with Zoom, and LakeCAM is on here too. And I'm sure we can, we'll look at that. Yeah, it could be a problem. So, I mean, the other alternative is there's 2 other alternatives depending upon the size of the meeting. We certainly can move to the auditorium at the high school. But once again, that seats 600 people, and we can only put in, I forget the number, 150 or 180 people in that, which probably would be okay. We talked about using the Ted Williams camp, the Loon Pond Lodge. We haven't calculated how many people, could be put in there, but we know it holds 200. But my guess is that maybe at the max, maybe 80 to 100. So when you talk about social distancing and spacing people out, you'd be surprised how much space, it takes up. So.
Yeah, I believe it's 10 people per 1,000 square feet of open space inside.
Rich, I think even if we can't work all the meetings out, I think for our best efforts of transparency, I think we should try and at least get 1 or 2 of them for the public.
Okay, we can work that out.
Or at the very least, all the board members meet in one room, and then the Zoom part is open to the public.
Yeah. Okay, we can consider that.
Okay. Very good. Does anybody else have any comments based on this schedule?
Yeah, I got a comment, Mr. Chairman.
Go right ahead.
Rich. Between October 14th and October 28th, you've told the other boards, the members of the committee, to go back to their boards to see if they need any additional information to be added to this list. Now, stuff can be added to the list even after the fact, just so everybody knows. But I think, Mark, you said you wanted to give the other boards the opportunity to look at this and determine if they need anything else.
Oh, yeah, yeah, basically, we've had this for 24 hours or thereabouts, and I just think.
No, I agree.
might be nice.
So is there a date in between the 14th and the 28th? Or do we have up until the 28th to give them their input? If we don't, if they need something else, then they're not gonna be able to submit all the application materials to the town on October 28th.
Planning board meets on the 22nd, so I can communicate with them between now and then, and we should have an answer.
Okay,
Conservation meets on the 27th.
okay,
And we meet Board of Health meets next Wednesday, so we'll be
Okay.
able to plenty of time.
all right, so maybe it's not a problem then, maybe we're okay. Because what happens now is that once we determine the final list, okay? Nate, you're gonna have to help me on this, that it's my understanding that this committee has to vote on this to say, okay, this is all the stuff that we're asking the other boards to provide. And then this goes on its way to the individual boards and so forth. Is that correct, Nate? Nate?
Yeah, yeah. So this is kind of a two-part or two-pronged effort where the data October 28th, I definitely agree with you, Rich and Mark, that we need to give a little bit of time to go back to the respective boards and committees, review the updated permits matrix to say, okay, this is what we're going to have.
Uh-oh.
Froze them
If
up.
are you still there?
Yep.
Okay, I'm getting a note on my screen that says your internet connection is unstable.
I hate it when that happens.
Yes, yeah. So on October 28th, if the 43D committee gets back together with any input that we try to get to Rhino Capital in advance of the meeting, if there's anything else that comes up on the October 28th meeting, we should deem that we agree upon the submittal, the required permits and approvals. Once that's done, they can submit their full application. We then have 15 days to get it to environmental partners, help us make a determination that the package is complete submittal. Then we need to notify the applicant that it is in fact complete. Then we can start the submittal process. I think the November 18th first public hearing will probably work. The concern that I have with that is that we want to avoid constructive granting of any of these approvals. So as we kind of separate disciplines, whether it be architectural, landscape, traffic, wetlands, septic, whatnot, I think that I would like to see something from Rhino Capital up front that says, okay, we understand that this is going to be stretched out through a longer duration. And whereas typically I don't have all of the dates in front of me, but if septic plan review is, Chris, you might have to help me on this, say 65 days, we don't want to constructive grant anything because we've purposefully stretched this out per discipline. I think that it would be somewhat difficult, I mean, to have that public hearing on the first, on November 18th rather, because we do have to do notification to abutters and legal ads and whatnot. So to get those, and again, I don't know all of the timelines, but if you have to run a legal ad for 2 weeks, you'd have to have it in the paper within the next couple of weeks, and we haven't even deemed the package complete by then. So, you know, we do want to make sure that these are public hearings and not 43D committee hearings. Once we determine this package complete, the 43D committee somewhat disbands. The permits coordinator stays directly involved and make sure that they can, you know, she can help coordinate these meetings. But we just need to make sure, again, no constructive grants. We need something in writing for that. And then I'd like to make sure that these timelines work as far as legal ads and notification to abutters. So at first glance, they look a little aggressive. But if we coordinate them properly, maybe we can make them work.
I think if we ask for permission for a continuance at each hearing,
Yeah.
it also stops the clock from starting. Also,
Yeah, you're right. In the past, what we've done, and actually, Chris, you were involved in it with a project at the old Island Terrace nursing home, is because once you ask for a continuance and you continue to a certain meeting, then what happens if for some reason you can't meet, we get a snowstorm, we get a lack of a quorum, you can't call to order to ask for another continuance. So, a lot of times we take a look ahead, and where we see on this schedule, March 3rd being the conclusionary hearing, I might make a suggestion that says, upon application to the various boards and committees and commissions, that we put a stay on constructive grant until at least March 30th or something like that. Just to make sure it's known that we're here to work with the developer, but we also have a responsibility to put ourselves in the best shape possible. Just my opinion. I wouldn't mind hearing what Attorney Mather had to say about that.
Nate, while you were going through that, I was looking at the guidelines as to when the 180-day clock starts ticking. After we submit our application, then the boards have, the committee has 20 days to determine whether or not it's complete. So let's just assume that we make the application on the, let's see, that would be the 28th, and the board uses the full 20 days. That's when your 180-day period begins. And I hope my math is correct because I did it quickly. That actually takes us into the middle of May.
Even if it was earlier, you were March 3rd was only 150 days. So we still, I think Tyler had mentioned, there's still room there.
There's still room. Whereas we certainly don't want to force the town to make a decision when they're not ready. And I know Tyler will back me up on that, if additional time is needed, we'd certainly grant it. But I think we're well within the time periods that we can meet here. If we get some delays, weather delays or whatever, I think we can discuss any potential extensions at that time. And then Nate, you might back me up on this. I think there's also ways that 180 days can be paused and extended. But I think we've got right now, I think we have an aggressive but a legitimate order that we can meet with a couple of months built in as a safeguard. Again, I don't think we need to pause after every meeting. I think the board should look after every meeting and see how are we doing on our time periods. And then if a pause is necessary, we can discuss it at that point. But I think we have plenty of time.
So Bob, the 43D statute, and this is the point, do you believe that supersedes any time frame for individual filings? Because under 43D is a separate statute than what would be required under the Wetland Protection Act or 310 CMR for Board of Health Title V. I know that we have the 180 days, but do you think that 180 days now applies to any subsequent submissions like we have planning board site plan review and whatnot?
I wish I could answer it definitively, but as everyone knows, the town is a novice at this. Our applicant is a novice. It's never been done before. So perhaps it would be worthwhile to get a town council opinion on the time periods. I'm sure that they didn't put 180 days in there arbitrarily and didn't intend to cut anybody off early on it. But what do you think about getting an opinion from town council as to, we know 180 days for all the permits, but if there are any individual permits like the Conservation Commission, do we have to meet their time periods? We need to know that now.
Yeah, and that was my point on the actual filing of the individual permits and approvals. I mean, I can certainly get council's opinion on that, but it also just seems to, if Rhino Capital is in agreement with that, and it does seem to be reasonable that upon application, we just submit a memo that, or, something that memorializes the fact that, constructive grants for individual petitions will be the 180 days. I had looked at it for March 30th, but like you said, if it's May, that's fine too. It really should run concurrently with the 180 days for 43D. I just figured it was worth mentioning because I know a lot of those other approvals have individual time periods.
Well, I agree with that. And I think the 180 days would definitely apply to the special permit under the Development Opportunities District. So why don't you check with town council, and I'll talk with Tyler, but I think we'd be willing to live with the final date of 180 for all the permits. Tyler, do you have any feelings on that?
Yeah, I continue to feel indifferent about this timeline. I'm probably going to say a few unpopular things right now, but I'm going to go ahead and say them anyway. Despite the scale of this project being literally very, very large, it is very simplistic in nature. It's a fairly rectangular lot with a perfectly rectangular building on it. So yes, in scale, it's large. In complexity, it's not. And so, our general opinion, and again, not having experience in 43D, but having experience in a lot of different projects and a lot of different scales, we feel that 180 days is a fair amount of time to review something like this. And as we've been going through this process, as Attorney Mather said, we're novices along with the town. There's been so much discussion, and I'll even go as far to call it angst over this clock of 180 days, that it seems to be more harm than good for us, at least at this point, because we're spending time in figuring out how to delay, how to stop, how to always pause the clock, how to avoid starting it. That if we could just potentially wipe all that away, we could probably just get going instead of continually debating over how we're going to be calculating every single day. So from our standpoint as owners, we're not self-interested to tell the town and monitor their clock and check their days. And, we're here to create a fair process and an equitable process for everyone, that all the boards have the time they need to review everything. And we feel that we have an incredibly professional, incredibly thorough group that's going to be able to present the information in the right format, and it's in complete format. So to answer the question in a very, very succinct manner is that it's probably not a conversation for here, but as we begin to all figure out this process together, my initial reaction and feeling to date is that this 180 days seems to be more of a hindrance than a help to us in summary. And so maybe there is a discussion with town council about us submitting a waiver of rights to it or something like that, because it just, again, seems to be more harm than good.
So Tyler, I don't think you said anything unpopular there. I think that was all reasonable, and just, it was wise to air that out. Thank you.
I appreciate it. I was scared I was going to get yelled at there.
So.
No, and I think if the wording in the 43D, like the guidebook from the state and some of the state guidance, if it was clear that that 180 days just superseded all the other dates, then we got one number to worry about. And I think we probably wouldn't even be having this conversation right now. But yeah, I think once we get into it, it'll move smoothly.
Yeah, because our feeling is that, obviously with all things with the state, when they create a rule, they aren't creating it for any one particular project or group of people or anything. They're just saying, well, if a project gets submitted, we feel that 180 days is enough time. It wasn't like someone came up with this rule specific to our warehousing project on this particular site. It's just this general rule. And so when you try to fit, it sort of feels like a square peg round hole scenario, where we have a rule that we're trying to force to fit our specific project, when that rule was created for this site, yes, but maybe not for this particular project or this particular developer. So again, not to drag this on, probably a conversation for a different time, but I do think we're at least open to having a conversation about, again, we're just trying to make it work for everyone, and we're not self-interested to be holding out a stopwatch on anyone.
All right, very good. If no one else has any other comments on your schedule, at this point, I'd just like to suggest that we, as board members, bring it back to our respective boards like we discussed. I think that everybody should email back to, if we have a permits coordinator at that point, or myself and Chris Spratt, the chair or vice chair, any other submittals or information that they would request added to the application by before actually October 28th, when they plan to submit the application. So, anybody else have anything?
No.
All right. Being that there's no other comments, Tyler, are you satisfied with how this evening's gone and that we can move on from this with the next step?
Absolutely. This is incredibly informative, and Brittany and I will go ahead and make these changes that we've discussed. She's made some notes here. I've also made some notes. So we will make a few adjustments and turn this right out tomorrow morning.
Very good. So I think that concludes the pre-application meeting. Would you say? With Rhino Capital.
From my perspective, yes. Yes, from Rhino Capital's perspective, yes.
All right, very good. So we have some other material on the agenda tonight. The next item on the agenda is to discuss a new 43D permit coordinator. And I know I've had some discussions with Rich and Nate regarding this. I know that there was some checking into conflicts and different things. So I'm going to turn the floor over to either Rich or Nate, whoever wants to speak to this first.
Okay.
Rich.
All right, I guess I'll address it. Like Mark said, we had discussions about, potentially who may, believe it, replace the town administrator as the project coordinator for this project, and we discussed a few people. And we have checked, and I think we're still waiting for one other additional information to come back from the state, from a person that we do want to appoint. And I don't want to say who it is right now, because that wouldn't be fair. But the Board of Selectmen have it on the agenda, and I know Mark knows and Nate knows who we'd like to appoint. And so the board has it on, the Board of Selectmen have it on the agenda to appoint somebody on Monday night. We were hoping to have that information this evening. And that person would be on a part-time, basis, either as an employee or as a contractor, yet to be determined. So I think we have a good candidate, and as soon as we get the information back, then we can send an email out probably tomorrow, basically saying that who this person is, but I don't think it'll be appropriate to say it right now.
Understood. So that being said, we've got some minutes to approve. Did everybody get a chance to review the project review committee for 43D minutes of meeting for the September 9th, 2020 meeting?
Yes.
I'm gonna say that's a
I
yes.
read them.
Everybody. I did review them. They looked complete to me. So I'm going to make a motion to approve the minutes for the September 9th meeting as drafted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, starting with Chief Perkins. I'm going to say that's an aye. I think he's muted. Chris Spratt,
Aye.
Rich LaCamera,
Aye.
Michael Bryan,
Aye.
Nathan Darling,
Aye.
Liz Nash.
I have to abstain. I think I must have either didn't receive them or I didn't notice, so my apologies for being off there.
Okay, and John Oliver
I wasn't sworn in yet, so I shouldn't vote.
and Bob Bouchard.
Aye.
So the motion carries with a majority. And we have another set of minutes to approve. It is the September 15th minutes of meeting for the 43D committee. I also reviewed them. If nobody has any changes or edits to those, I would make a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll second it.
So,
All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Chief Perkins,
Aye.
Chris Spratt,
Aye.
Rich LaCamera,
aye.
Michael Bryan,
Aye.
Nathan Darling,
Aye.
Liz Nash, you abstain?
I don't think I got them. Yeah.
Okay, and John Oliveri
Aye.
and Bob Bouchard.
Aye.
Motion carries with a majority. So approve our minutes. So I know some information kind of gets circulated through the Board of Selectmen. Rich, do you have anything else, either new or old business, that you'd like to comment on before we entertain any adjournment?
No, I'm all set, Mark. Thanks.
Okay, Nate, how about yourself?
I was just wondering if you wanted to schedule the October 18th meeting or the next meeting to, conclude this at least section.
28th, correct?
That's when they have for submit the application materials to the town. I think that, a couple of weeks are reasonable for us to get back together.
Right, so the next 43D meeting would be on the 28th, no?
Correct. And then, they could probably submit the application materials to the town the following day, pending a vote of the 43D committee that we agree upon the permits matrix.
All right, so should I just announce, or do we need to take a vote on that with a motion?
Yeah, I don't think we can take a vote.
Yeah, just, all right.
You can announce you're the chair.
The 43D meeting will be next scheduled on Wednesday, October 28th at 7 PM. And that's that. So I think that concludes our business tonight. I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Unanimous.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.